Perfect. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Friday, to the last talk and the last presentation of this week. We still got 4 weeks coming. Exciting 4 weeks filled with panel discussions, case studies, and keynotes. So I'm really happy that, we've got quite many people joining in. So I'm really grateful. And we've got beautiful speakers ready for today. I've called them the Three Musketeers because they're all three lovely, highly experienced gentlemen. We've got Darshan Shah, we've got Tom Halliwell and Wotu Shul joining us for today panel discussion, also with a little bit of a keynote that they'll be sharing. So hello again, good morning. I know there are people joining in from the US. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I would like to welcome you again. This is PPM Summer Talks Conference happening 5 weeks in a row from the 27th of July until the 27th of August. On behalf of Wise Science, I'd like to thank everyone, all my colleagues for helping me out to put this conference together. It's my first one, so please be kind. I'm trying my best, and I'm really excited that I've got so many great speakers on board for this conference, and we can all share and learn together. The entire conference is part of our PPM workout platform, which is a place for all experts and professionals from the pharma industry, pharma field, where they can share all their inspiration, ideas, knowledge, write blog posts, articles, anything that they've got dwelling within themselves, so we can all connect. And really, it's for free. We've got no intention of spamming people and dragging them there, paying them for it. But really, it's just a beautiful space and place for people to connect with one another. And you'll hear me say this a lot, but it's a tool that we're giving away for professionals in order to really grow stronger together. So I'm giving a tool, but I need people like the experts and like you, everyone joining, and speakers who will make the platform to be alive. So hello everyone. I'm pretty sure maybe Darshan, Tom, or what would like to say a quick hi before I introduce them.
Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are.
Yeah, good morning, afternoon, evening. Hopefully not night.
Right. I don't know if we got anybody from Japan, but probably not.
No, but I'll be having a speaker from who's actually based in Japan in a few weeks. So that's going to be really interesting for him. I think it's going to be a midnight there. Yeah, we've got, as I said, we've got these three lovely gentlemen who will be talking about something really current and interesting. Seeing that everyone is hit by the COVID-19 global pandemic, I was having a discussion a month back with Darshan, and he suggested, Katie, let's talk about how we can actually see the pandemic as a source of resilience and strength, and rather than hearing all the negativity that surrounds the entire population these past year and a half, 2 years almost. And I said, you know what you're saying, this is really interesting. I think people really need to hear someone who can tell them optimistically that really this is, we can make it through and it can be powerful. So I'm really excited for today's talk, for the panel discussion. So quickly, let me just say a few words about each of the musketeers, as I call them, and I'm not going to get over it, so you'll hear me say it today again. So please laugh, everyone, when I say it. So as I said, we've got Darshan Shah, a pharma industry professional with experience across all phases of drug development, developing and managing multi-year, multi-million-dollar budgets with timelines, competitive intelligence, including industry trends, alliance management, co-development with external partners, and launch planning. Readiness across all regions. He's a project management leadership from preclinical submission. He to global launches in different therapeutic areas. These are all mouthfuls. I've got it written down. I'm reading it as we go. He's got an expertise in designing, planning, and organizing, leading cross-functional team workshops, and creating multi-year roadmaps and scenarios planning, resulting in strong baseline understanding across the team of strategic and tactical deliverables through major milestones across development through approval / launch readiness. That's Darshan. Thank you again so much for coming and for joining us and for wanting to be here. We've got a lovely gentleman, Tom Halliwell. He's an efficient and effective organizer with a demonstrated ability to coordinate the activities of multifunctional teams to achieve commercial objectives. He's a proven leader and facilitator. He's able to motivate teams to share vision and overcome problems together. An effective communicator with first-class interpersonal skills. He's got a broad knowledge and experience base covering key operational disciplines and all phases of development. Extensive experience with most widely used software packages, project management, spreadsheets, word processing, and presentations, we'll see today. His specialties include pharmaceutical, so oncology, virology, CNS, transplantation, gastroenterology, hepatology, and diagnostics, infectious disease, hormones. That's Tom. Thank you again to you as well for joining from England. And we've got Laura Schul, Vice President, Project and Portfolio Management from Sangamo Therapeutics. I've got quite a handful. So let me start. He started as a group leader at NV Organon and subsequently a senior investigator working on drug discovery at the Novartis Institute for Tropical Diseases in Singapore. In 2010, Wouter took on the role of project manager for the malaria program and NITD, overseeing the preclinical and clinical development of 2 new classes compounds. In 2012, he moved to Emerald, California. So good morning to him. It's really early there, where he became the head of the project management group for the infectious diseases department at Novartis, and before joining Sangamo in 2018. So thank you again to you as well. Hopefully they kind of give the audience a little bit of a background, but please feel free to say more as we go on. Yeah, thank you again so much for joining, for wanting to be part of this. Before we start, just a few minutes, I would like to all ask you a few questions. So I'll just randomly pick, no need to sweat and worry, they're all easy questions. I will start with Tom because he's probably very similar time zone as I am. Please tell me what you had for breakfast.
For breakfast this morning, well, toast actually. It was toast and marmalade.
I was expecting porridge from the UK fan.
Toast and marmalade and coffee, of course.
Thank you. Please tell me what helped you to get where you're right now in your career.
What helped me? I think luck more than anything else.
How would you define luck? How would you define luck?
I think it's just being in the right place at the right time. It really is a lot of that. I think if we look back, many of us, it just happens that we're in the right place for an opportunity to come up, and that, I think that's been the case for me certainly. Perfect,
thank you. Another gentleman, I've got I'll pick Darshan. Anything lovely that you had for breakfast that you wanted to share with us?
No, just had a couple of oranges and my morning tea. I have to have tea in the morning.
Is it a black one? Is it black tea?
Yeah, absolutely.
A fan here as well. I would like to ask you, by way of comparison, do you remember something you've done or something that you wish everyone was doing and why?
Everyone, say that again?
Yeah, so, if you like to compare yourself, is there something that you've done or something that everyone was doing as a kind of an advice in a career where you're right now, or how you got to where you're right now?
And that everybody else was doing the same thing?
Yes, exactly. If there was an advice, let's say an advice that, you would tell everyone, please do this. This is what works for me. This is the best.
Oh, I don't know if everybody else is doing, but I do like to, when I'm on my free time, I do like to imitate certain personalities, and I just enjoy impersonating certain things like our former presidents and things like, of course, in a jovial fashion, just for fun and laugh. So I hope there's somebody here, and just by way of compliment, speaking about personalities and things like that, Tom, I think you could double as Gene Hackman.
Well, thanks for that. I also dabble as Elvis, so I am an Elvis impersonator, believe it or not.
I'm expecting a song at the end towards the Q&A, please. So please, Walter, you probably haven't had breakfast yet. Any like tea or coffee, probably?
Of course, I've had coffee. I have to have coffee.
And I've got a question for you. What's the question that you get? If you're being interviewed, part of panel discussion, maybe, what is the question you're the most tired of hearing on the subject of like on your career, let's say? Is there anything like that?
I can't really have one question I'm tired of hearing. I mean, the question that is
give me multiple.
hard to answer is like, why did you get out of science or something? And I don't think I did go out of science. I think there's still a lot of science what we're doing. You can still be a scientist and still be in project management. So I always find it a little bit of a silly question, as if you're only one thing and you can't.
So true.
You can't.
And you can never change because people don't like change.
Yes. So. And of course, the question: can you do an Elvis impression? That I cannot. So I leave that to Tom.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was honestly, I just really wanted a quick warm up before you start to put you in a better mood. And right now, I would just like to give you all three awards. Yes, Three Musketeers awards, and feel free to say everything that's in your mind. And I know that you've prepared a presentation, so everyone, welcome. I'm welcoming all three beautiful speakers of today's session. And I'm giving them a word. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all again for joining. I know it may be late on Friday for some people and very early, obviously, for my panelist and friend, Wouter on the West Coast. And then, of course, afternoon time for Tom. So, and thank you for the opportunity to moderate this session about COVID-19 and resilience, really. So with everything that Katie mentioned about the three of us in terms of our background, really for this particular topic, it really doesn't matter. We can put all that aside because COVID-19 changed our lives as we all know it. Every one of us who's present on the screen know it. The scope of this was global. The speed with which it came was faster than we could get behind it, and its impact was broad and deep, and we still feel it. So in all of this, though, one thing that has come out as I was beginning to reflect on it over the last 18 months that have passed since we first heard about COVID-19 is that about our individual and our collective resilience, because it is only because of that we are actually here present, even talking about it. We have made it through here. And so therefore, as much as there is tragedy involved in the epidemic, that the pandemic that is still around, there are characteristics that brought us here. Our customs, our food, our habits are different. We're all global, but yet this is one thing in common, this experience of fear and apprehension over the last 18 months. And what is it that about us as human beings that brought us here? So as we started talking about it, and then Tom, Wouter, and I felt like maybe there are a few things that we can pull together. And of course, 30 minutes or so is not sufficient enough, but whatever we are able to manage by way of distilling down few things, our thoughts, let's bring it to the table and share with our colleagues here. And what is it that if we can actually take it forward, because these are the kinds of things that can actually prove very helpful and useful to us, even when the pandemic is past us, and it will be gone someday. But what are those positive lessons that we can draw from this experience that we can take forward? So it is unscripted. We did put together a few slides just to supplement our thoughts. But at the same time, really, there is no script here. So it's what you'll be hearing is basically our thoughts amongst the three of us, and we welcome any questions you folks on the screen have. We will try to answer any of those questions. But with that, we'll just get started. And by the way, a disclaimer: these are the views of our three of us. We don't represent anybody. I don't think we represent our individual companies. So that's our disclaimer. Just wanted to get it out of the way. So with that, I'm going to share the slide, and let me just make sure that I have it ready. And then I'll ask, so I don't know, I've got two slides. Okay, there it is. So there it is. Let me see if I can make it full screen. And while I'm sharing the screen, I'm not able to see everybody. So I'm not able to see the body language of the folks on the presentation. But as I was thinking about this topic about the COVID-19 and resilience, really just, simple Google definition, the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties and toughness, the often remarkable resilience of, so there is some examples of the use of the term, but basically it is about our ability to recover from difficulties or adverse times. And in terms of psychologists, how do they define it? It is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress, such as family and relationship problems, serious health problems, workplace financial stressors. Of course, everything that we've experienced with the pandemic is well beyond what the examples mentioned here. So with that, Wouter, I will start out with you in terms of the resilience that we've seen over the last 16 or 18 months. And I know you have some example that you had pulled out from some of the scientific literature. That's something that stands out as an example of what we have been able to demonstrate by way of our collective resilience. So I'm flashing this slide here as you put your thoughts together and probably briefly talk about it.
Yes, thank you there, Sean. Yeah, so I think especially with my background in infectious diseases, this is really what stood out when this topic was brought to us. Like what stood out as a positive amongst all the negatives and the suffering that we have had to endure. One thing that stood out for me is really the speed at which we've been able to develop these vaccines, right? And I think everybody is aware that it went really fast, but it is really an amazing combination, I think, of both the science and also the project management that has gone into this, right? So as it says here, previously, 4 years was probably the fastest that anybody could have imagined a vaccine to have been developed. And this was now done at such an incredible speed. And I think that was also a combination of really efficient planning and resources and all the three main components that we know go into a project: time, speed, and scope, right? And resources. And so this was an amazing example. And I'm sure we're going to learn more about really the details, and we can learn from those details, like what does it really take to go that fast? But it's also to leverage all the science and all the technologies that have been developed over the decades before, right? So that we've now come to this point where the messenger RNA technology, the LNP technology was kind of ready to be capitalized on. So, and this has now also launched, of course, this technology on a much higher level, but may have taken a lot longer to be further investigated and accepted and validated. Has now basically become a pretty mature technology that we can now use also for future challenges in the infectious diseases and other areas. So in this pressure cooker that has delivered us these vaccines, because it's more than one, we have come out with something that is incredibly valuable and that will hopefully help us in the future when we're challenged with these viral epidemics.
Mhm.
So that really stood out for me as one major thing.
Right, right. And I think during our pre-talk about this, we were talking about that, the results that we are seeing with the development of these vaccines in a record amount of time didn't happen exactly, begin on January 1, 2020 and end on December 31st of 2020. What fed into this, and I think, Wouter, you were trying to make that point, is that the investments that our industry, the pharma industry, makes year upon year, large investments, many of which actually end up resulting in failures, but the science that evolves and the learnings that we gather over not just years but decades actually come together, and this is, I think, a testament to everybody who is associated in this particular industry, is that the work we have done today, we just don't know when exactly it will reflect in some kind of a positive outcome sometime in the future.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I've often said in our regulatory meetings that none of the drugs that are in the market, none of the PIs, the package insert or the SMPC of the drug, the products that are marketed ever carries the name of any individual, and yet it's a reflection of the work of thousands of people who contribute to the medicines, and in this particular case, vaccines. So no, that's an outstanding example of how, when everybody comes together, things can happen. I believe, Wouter, you had a couple other headlines as well, I think along the same line.
Yeah, it really goes to, I mean, I'm still very curious to see more details when I dug a little deeper about, like, okay, what was now exactly the project management, behind going this fast? You can find headlines, and I can find some articles, and it is basically mentioned there was a lot of money that especially governments put up, and there was, very direct interactions with health authorities, FDAs, and others. But there's still quite a lack of details that we would probably really want to know. Like, how exactly was this? What was what went on behind it, and was it just a matter of spending? Was it all done at risk? Was that really the major thing? Was it really just doing a lot of fast tracking and crashing and all those kind of things? Or so I'm still quite curious to find out more details. I couldn't really find that yet, and hopefully over time we will find out, because not every company was also successful. We also know that there were many pharmaceutical companies trying to develop a vaccine, and some also failed, that their vaccines were not effective, lower than 40% protection. So it was not a guarantee that we would come, and it maybe part of it was also that so many were doing it at the same time, so that there was many parallel efforts, but that in itself is also not a guarantee, right? So there is, and nobody thought it would be a guarantee, but it was still quite interesting to find out more. I'm sure that there will be the years and years to come, that this whole pandemic will be further analyzed on many levels, including this.
Right. And as we know, and Tom, feel free to chime in as well. But being in the same industry, we know how sometimes the process part of development takes place. Our traditional toll gates or stop gates, or whatever you want to call the go/no-go criteria, the risk management, and all of that. And I'm pretty sure that the people at Moderna and BioNTech and Pfizer and AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson and many others who were working on the vaccine development probably had to put aside all of those processes and just make things happen. And it would be great to hear the real story, as you're alluding to, Wouter. Someday there's an article published that how did we get through here, and that those might be some, again, good lessons, at least on the execution side, that we might be saying, well, these might be the ways to do things, as opposed to a more bureaucratic way. Let's see. So I want to bring in Wouter in this discussion, and this is more along the line about how the COVID crisis has really, kind of brought out a few things about the adaptation of technology and how personal, human behaviors and so on. So there are some things that I think, Tom, you were able to pull out from recent articles. Maybe you can speak to it a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, just following on from the previous slides, I think what occurred to me that's very positive about what happened with the COVID vaccines is the level of cooperation between companies, between governments, large parts of society. There is a lot of positive cooperation, and the regulators, clearly, the partnerships that we've seen to make this happen is very, very positive, and we should see that as positive. And hopefully we can build on some of that in terms of speed of drug development generally. That some of those things, why did they happen, and what's stopping them from happening again? So I think we should learn from that and build on that. Just what occurred to me, just reflecting back to the beginning of the crisis, and it did happen incredibly quickly and hit all of us really hard. So one minute I was at a conference in Basel in March, next week I couldn't travel and I was working from home, and it was a brutal change. And all of us were then faced with, how do we continue to do business in the face of this? And speaking from my own company's perspective, it was, how do we continue to manufacture product? How do we continue to run clinical trials? There's a lot of very difficult questions we had to ask ourselves at that time. And then I came across this report by McKinsey, which was actually put together in June 2020, and it was talking about innovation in a crisis and why it's more critical than ever to innovate. And I think we've seen innovation, and I think pharmaceuticals, med tech generally come out more positive than many other industries. But this survey from McKinsey was based on over 200 companies in many different industries, and what they found is that 90% of companies believe that actually the COVID crisis will fundamentally affect the way they do business over the next 5 years, which is quite staggering in a way, but clearly shows the depth of which people feel, that companies feel in many different industries, that the landscape, the game has changed significantly as a result of this crisis. And yet, on the counter side, only 21% feel they have the expertise, resource, and commitment to pursue the new growth opportunities that they see, which again is quite sobering, isn't it? When you think about the opportunity is there, they see it, but they can't necessarily, or they don't feel at that particular stage equipped to take advantage of it. And the whole emphasis of this particular report was on the importance to maintain focus on innovation. And although it was clear that many companies were just trying to maintain their business functionality, how do we operationally keep going, it was stressing the importance of maintaining a focus on innovation, because what they found is that basically companies were forgetting all about innovation because they were too focused on operational stuff for obvious reasons. But when they look back at a previous crisis, the financial crisis, what they found is that the companies that actually maintained their focus on innovation did much better than those that didn't. And so they were using that, and not only was it important within the crisis itself, but also 5 years plus after the crisis itself, those companies were still doing much better than anybody else. So it was just stressing the importance, the positive importance of maintaining that focus on innovation. And in my experience, what I've found is that, in a crisis, the opportunity to make things happen is much higher, because the barriers that were there before in a crisis suddenly go. The objections that people would put up, suddenly in a crisis, things can get done that previously, wouldn't have happened.
Right.
In clinical trials, there were many things that people had talked about as possibilities, like remote monitoring that was done, but not very effectively by many people. Suddenly, out of necessity, people were doing it. A bit like working from home.
Absolutely, right.
A lot of skeptics, but out of necessity, it happened, and there were positive benefits coming from it. So I think that was a really positive report, and really got me thinking about, we do need to try and push things through in this crisis, because we have a conducive environment for change and innovation right now.
Right. And it's
All
almost no
companies have
going
small
back.
open, don't they?
Right. Mm-hmm. And what stands out in this particular slide are these two numbers, the 90% and the 21%. And really, 90% believe that the change that things will fundamentally change over the 5 years. So with that belief and recognizing that we are not that well equipped to do that is going to fuel that innovation, because now you got that huge gap to achieve, what has to happen. So I believe that that's probably the delta between the two numbers is probably the driver for the innovation. Let's see. There are more other such things about resilience that has been shown, and this is, I think, from the survey in the UK. Quite a few number of charts, but maybe there is some summary here that you might be able to reflect on.
Yeah, this was quite. I think we've all come across people that we've worked with in our teams that have really struggled throughout the pandemic with various things, as a consequence of working from home, the impact that's had on their lifestyles, having to cope with, many people having to cope with kids at home, homeschooling for large periods of time, sharing it with their partners. There's lots of things that we've had to cope with that we haven't had to before in the same way. And it's caused quite a lot of stress on people, and it's interesting to see how people have coped with it. Mm-hmm. And this report really tries to understand how resilient people are, and so it is asking direct questions. So I'm not going to go into all the detail here, but I think from the top left hand for me, I think it's probably the same for you. That quite a few people think they're coping very well, fairly well, mm-hmm. But you've got a number of people who 11% saying that they're not coping very well at all, and so then you've got people who basically don't care. They don't think they're stressed. So you've got what's it all about, which I find hard to believe, but that is the case according to the survey. But what is interesting is the compounding effect of the different waves. It appears to have had actually a negative impact on people's resilience. Mm-hmm. With increased numbers of waves, it has pushed down the level of people's resilience, which I thought was quite interesting. But the good news, I think, is there are some positive ways of coping with the stress, which people have found work for them. Things like exercising, getting out there, looking at green space. Exercise is clearly important. Eating healthily. So there's a lot of positive mm-hmm. stuff there that people have found helpful, and even accessing news and the balance between what they read, particularly on COVID, but just general news and social media. And some people struggle with that as well. So I thought it's quite a good report. It's quite in depth and it's worth looking up if you're interested. But I just found it very helpful in terms of showing that people have found ways for them to cope, and people are generally using at least one coping strategy that works for them, which I think is really good news and very positive.
So let me briefly ask, maybe at a personal level, each of you, Tom, Wouter, and I'll be happy to share mine as well, thoughts about it. So at a personal level, Wouter, looking at this particular slide about coping with stress or the pandemic or the last 16, 18 months, any particular one or two things that you've done or changed as by way of habit or anything that you've implemented over the last 16 months that you are okay to share with us?
Well, sure. Yeah, I was just looking at that graph on the top right, of methods to cope with stress related to. I mean, my response was all of them, pretty much. So, but I think definitely getting outside, right? It is so easy to just be in your house and just be behind your computer. You get up in the morning, you get behind your computer, and then getting out is something for me that's been very important. Is that the little exercise, you get some sunlight, you get out of that little cocoon that you're in. So yeah, and I try to do that because it's easy to just kind of keep going with it.
Right. Tom?
Yeah, one of the biggest one for me, which I didn't have time for before, because I had a several-hour commute each way. So is exercise. So I'm now exercising a lot, much more than I've ever done before. But it's only because I've got time to do that now. So that to me is a real positive coming out of the crisis for me personally.
Great. Personally, for myself, spending time with family. Actually, in our daily routines, I've got two daughters, and we took the opportunity during this time, and we have kind of made it a habit now. With the volume of pictures that we take with our cell phones or video camera or whatever it is, but we don't find time to really go back and look at them, and we really try to find time and say, let's go back past in time. And it was reconnecting with our own past and more as a family to see things. And really, that was very helpful in coping with the time that we were facing. But it was all of those things actually came in very handy to say, let's come together and spending more time together as a family. So personally, that was a big win for me. Otherwise, we were back to our own routines when things are normal. Everybody's doing their own thing. Let's just move on a little bit further. So here's similar to, and not to inundate people with a lot of surveys and numbers, but these are some of the positives that have come out over the last 16 or 18 months. How technology, and even though we are kind of used to the technology, but that people's comfort level with the technology, the use of technology has dramatically increased over the last 16 or 18 months. The trust in the organizations, I think, managements at various companies, yours included, ours included as well, where management and employees have come together, and a greater amount of trust among all levels of people that we're going to do the right thing. Obviously working from home, while it was done, it's somewhat here and there. It was not a routine thing globally. And all of a sudden for senior level management people to really ask entire company to work from home is a dramatic shift, and that only involves one factor, which is trust, that at the end of the day people are going to do the right thing, and which is what people have done. In fact, the productivity numbers have gone through the roof during this pandemic, because people were giving more than what they would have normally in normal times working, normal daytime jobs. And so this is a real positive that has come out from the pandemic. Similar numbers as well, where the management is much more supportive of employees in whatever the situations they're facing. Again, the comfort level with the use of the technologies have gone up. Here's another one from McKinsey, where a number of things related to the automation in technology and the operational efficiencies, a lot of the blue triangles that you see are pointing upwards, showing that in the long term, all of these things are heading in the right direction, meaning better use of the technology, the AI, the artificial intelligence, and overall the disruption in the models that have happened in the way things are done and how we have adapted newer ways of doing things. Let's go through. So there's one article from Forbes, which I think kind of capsulized kind of our thoughts, which is that ultimately remote working is a new experience for many employees and employers alike. So perhaps the key takeaway from the research is that we should not be too worried if we have gotten things right straight away. This period should be viewed as much for the learning opportunity it provides as we adapt to the rapidly changing landscape we find ourselves in. And so with that, we'll kind of bring some key takeaways that we have collectively thought, and then we'll open up for our questions from our audience. But some of the key takeaways from the experience have been simple things can be enormously powerful, and we know that from the use of mask. Mask is just an example of a simple technology, but how highly effective it is in curtailing the transmission of the virus. when we come together with a common purpose, we can really surprise ourselves. And as Wouter was describing about the development of the vaccine, or just touch upon the extract from the Nature article, is the speed with which the vaccine was developed really surprised everybody. The resilience that we've all demonstrated individually at home. We're not out there to broadcast to people out there, but we know it ourselves, that how each one of us, despite all the situations that we'll face, we really held ourselves together. This is Tom, you might be able to speak on it, the standing on a strong foundation built over decades.
Yeah, I think, I think as was mentioned earlier, that the vaccine development didn't happen quickly because it started on one day. We've got a lot of technology that has been existing, probably hasn't been used to its full potential, and a lot of particularly privately as well, the use of Zoom, for maintaining contact with friends, and getting your grandmother to link in by Zoom. Who would have thought that sort of thing would be happening? But it works,
Right.
and so that technology was there, and it's okay. They may have upped their game a little bit in terms of developing, different aspects of that technology, but the basic infrastructure for many of the things that we've been able to more effectively exploit during this time were already there, and we've just been able to build on them.
Right. And then I think it was mentioned earlier that taking positive steps to build our own personal resilience through a number of ways, which is doing the right things like exercising, eating healthy food, balancing our work life, bringing the balance to the work life equation. And finally, just having a sense of humility that in this, the impact each one of us has, while our time is relatively brief, the impact each of us has can be enormous, can be well passed away after we are all gone. And so just having that sense of humility from this particular experience. So with that, I'm just going to stop sharing the slides, and then let's open up for any questions people might have. Okay, pause.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for sharing all your thoughts and ideas. So far, there are no questions. I think this is the time where Tom starts singing.
That needs financial reimbursement.
So that happens at another Zoom link, yeah. Well, I might have a question. If you all would like to answer. What, or if there are any, what are the biggest risks that you've taken throughout this entire pandemic situation, regarding career, regarding your personal life? What do you think? What were the biggest challenges for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, I can speak personally. I mean, one of the biggest risks was moving during the pandemic, moving house, that is. So,
oh, okay. I thought moving as an exercise because you said you liked it.
But moving house was not something we particularly planned to do in a pandemic, but we did do it. And obviously that did carry quite a bit of risk. Yeah,
of course. Yeah. Wouter or Darshan, anything?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think, one interesting aspect of course as well is that when a challenge like this comes, then as a company, especially on a company level, smaller biotech companies, it's also, you have to look at opportunities and how does it affect you and also the competition, and can you actually, right? Like, so if you have challenges, especially the ones facing in clinical trials that completely kind of collapse, like how could you then see if you can actually start faster than the competition? So because it's like it affects everyone. So how can you then maybe still come out a little bit ahead and make it work for you? So that's definitely something that is very challenging. You have to maybe take risks there as well. So yeah, it's interesting. By the way, there's also a question in the discussion in the chat. So
if maybe Darshan's got something. Yeah, if Darshan's got something to say about the risk, and then I can read out the question out loud.
Right. The risk actually, so I was in the middle of a launch readiness, actually, to launch a product in last year in the middle of the pandemic, and it was in the April timeframe. So obviously, we were planning for a launch as a normal launch, which would have been having face-to-face meetings with the launch team, et cetera, et cetera. And all of those things went out of the window. So we had to really rethink everything, every single step. And what actually came out was it was an outstanding launch, went flawlessly. And from the time of approval to the time of the product available in the market was less than 2 days, which surprised everybody that we were able to actually execute that. And so it didn't happen without everybody who was invested in this coming together and making it happen. But that was the risk that we were saying, how are we going to do it? Because March 13th, I remember March 13, 2020 was the last day we were physically in the office, and we were asked to go home. And we were saying, we've got a launch coming in April. How are we going to make this happen? And it happened.
So it seemed impossible really until it was done. And then
Exactly.
you were, congratulations. That's wonderful. And, I had goosebumps just listening to, because the amount of pressure, I cannot imagine it. I've got completely different pressure, but the amount of pressure must have been on as a quite a big deal. So yeah, congrats to you. I'm happy. We've got a lovely comment by Alice. I will try and save Tom, so no one wants to hear you singing. How do each of you see the new normal coming together? Some people are productive and prefer to work completely remotely. Some prefer 100% on site, and others work better with a combination of the two. So this could be challenging. And if I can add to that, maybe if it's the new normal that we should think about, or if it's getting back to the old ways. So what do you think?
I think this is a really very great question, because I think this is going to be the next challenge, right? So now we're all on Zoom or whatever, and that means that we've come to, we've gotten used to it, and everybody is available on that little postage stamp size screen. But then at some point we'll have some hybrid, and how will that work? So if half the people are in one room together and then 5 people are on a screen, is that still that's a whole new environment. So I think we don't really know, right, how that's I think the challenges that were there before the pandemic, where if you were on a teleconference and it would always be a disadvantage to people who were all in the same room together. I think communication is still more than 50% body language and non-verbal communication, right? So I think that's still there. So I think we'll have to find out and see. I don't think there's like a very clear answer how that's going to work out. I don't know how the other guys feel about that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think it's going to be a hybrid, but some of this will depend on the individual companies. I mean, we've seen the messages from Google and others who want their staff fully back 100% in the office, and others will want that. I mean, my own particular company is bringing in a hybrid model, which will be the expectation that if people want to and can, they can work from home for no more than 2 days a week. So they expect you to be in the office the rest of the time. So I think every company is going to approach it in a different way that works for them. But I think it'll affect different roles as well. I mean, clearly manufacturing has to be in full time. But for me, it doesn't make a huge amount of difference, because I'm already was working pre-pandemic in global teams. So a lot of my team is not based with me in the UK. They're based in France, they're based in the US. So it makes no difference to me in that sense. What does make the difference is the face-to-face time, which we haven't been able to have, and I think has had a negative impact overall. Right. Not having that face-to-face time at all is been very difficult.
Yeah, there is not going to be one size fits all. Every company's situation is going to be different. One thing though that stands out is that if you rewind back to end of 2019 and then look at this, so basically skip from December 31, 2019 to today, July 30th, 2021, fundamentally, it has changed the way we were operating, or people in decision-making process, that you have to depart from the way you were thinking or operating, and you have to just adapt to yourself to new ways of doing things, or at least be open-minded, right? If you're stuck with old philosophies, it will prove counter, because competitors will jump ahead of you and potentially crush you. So the key word for me would be just be open-minded. Don't take anything as a given. Yes, things may have worked. It's like statements that you see in stock market reports, right? The past performance is not a guarantee to the future performance. So yes, there are a lot of management books written on how things are done or were done and successful. You open that book today, half the things may not even apply, or might take you in the negative direction. So only trust the tried and true things that have already been around us. COVID only taught us that, guys, rely on these things that have been around you, which is trusting your people, being open-minded, question things. Just because things have been working doesn't mean that that's the only way to do it. So I think those are the kinds of things that we have to always, put in front of ourselves.
Yeah, thank you for the input. And I feel this is being really wholesome. So I hope everyone is going to take the positivity from all of you to their lives. We've got a question from Estelle. Can we contribute increased productivity to the ability to work from home? So what do you think, gentlemen? Can we contribute increased productivity to the ability to work from home?
Well, Personally, I believe, and it may be true for many of you, that actually the productivity from working from home actually went up significantly, perhaps at a cost of, personal things, which could be your own health, because at least I know for a fact, and many of my own, my team members and colleagues, people were answering emails at times that you would not expect people to be answering. I was responding to emails at odd times, 10 o'clock at night or sometimes midnight, because my computer was never shut down. And you almost had the temptation of say, well, let me just check before I go to bed, if there's anything that I can respond to. In normal, quote unquote, normal times, when you go home, you got other things to do. We were just habituated with the way we were doing things. Working from home dismantled all of that. And so it did actually reflect very positively on the productivity part. I just do wonder at what cost, though, which probably largely came from somewhere else, which is your own self, or whether you were spending time with yourself, your family, your exercise, your food habits, et cetera, et cetera. But I think done well. So I think it has shown that working from home can help improve productivity. So drawing said, what, I need to rebalance. Even if you're working from home, you need to rebalance, quote unquote, the work-life balance, right? Because because you're home in pajamas doesn't mean that you have to be constantly working. You need to get away from your computer or cell phone or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think everyone is guilty of that. Me, myself,
Right.
Sometimes I think about, oh, well, it's just going to be one email. I can open it up, but then really the mental side of it just shifts, and, you're not resting. You're not getting ready for another day. You're always working. And I think maybe that comes in a cause of burning out and not wanting to be productive after a little longer, after a little while. Maybe other gentlemen, experience the same thing. Maybe it's just me and Darshan that are crazy like this.
No, I agree. I think, but it is, I think, a hybrid, I think, is going to be the best in terms of overall productivity, personally. Mm-hmm. I think working from home, for me, has released lots of extra time that I didn't have before because of my own individual commute. So that's definitely increased my productivity significantly because I've got lots of extra time. But what we've experienced this recently, going back into the office, starting to go back, people are, so looking a lot happier to be back because they're having lots of informal social conversations, catch-ups, and information flow is so much better. And you find out things that you would have maybe found out, but maybe several months later, because the grapevine hasn't been operating the same way as physically face-to-face. You're at the coffee machine, you're in the canteen queue, you speak to people, you find out information that you wouldn't have otherwise found out very easily. It's that informal networking that people really appreciate. And I've seen lots of people commenting on that by email recently. So I think productivity has improved definitely with working from home, but there definitely has to be a balance between the two. And we have to work hard to make sure we're separating our work and home life, because some people are particularly bad at doing that.
Yeah, always the balance. I feel like that's the most conjugated word of the year, no balance. And what about you, Walter? Anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, especially where does the productivity come from, right? Is it really just going through emails and going through documents, and it's just having more time spent on real work? I mean, for me, it is. I was just thinking about it as the others were talking. Like, part of it is also like I mentioned before, going for that walk. I mean, you're still thinking about stuff, or you're letting your mind go, which is also important to relax. And you can now do that more on your own term, right? So, I mean, normally if you're in the office, you can't just. Well, you can, but it's harder to just walk off and go around the block, which I still sometimes do. But so maybe we should. So. You're more, I guess, in charge and owner of your own time, and you now can, and that also comes then with discipline and with some kind of, you have to think about it more. So how can you make it all work together, right, to increase that productivity? Yes, if you do open emails at 11 p.m., then you can be more responsive, but at the same time, you may also decide to sleep in longer in the morning because you have nothing else, and that will make you more fresh for the rest of the day. You don't have to drag yourself out. So because you have to go to the office, but so you can manage your time better. So, and I think we have to be very thoughtful and mindful around how do we optimize that, right? And not just sit in our pajamas all day, Dasha.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder how many of you are actually wearing pants right now.
Okay, it is past 11 o'clock. I guess we can take one more question before.
Yeah, of course. So we've got a comment really from Peter. He says, it really depends on the type of task that we're working on. Some are more effective in person, some remotely. In example, feedback meetings should be in person. So that's a nice comment. That's really exactly as you've covered it. And we've got a last question from Greg. With sitting at a desk being a major health factor, how can we ensure employees are safeguarded? And then he actually says, there is another comment from Greg. I find matters that need alignment or workshops to resolve take much longer as people try to manage everything by bite-sized 1-hour Zoom calls rather than a face-to-face meeting. So yeah, how can we ensure employees are safeguarded with the sitting at a desk being a major health factor?
That's ergonomics kind of and health, and that's a great question. And I mean, of course, you could imagine that the company would send somebody to your home, but that's quite a big effort. Yeah, that's a great question. I have no experience with that at all.
I mean, I know from my own company, they just put together videos as to how to work from home effectively and safely. So I think you can do some of that remotely, and it works reasonably well because and then you have a quiz, so there's no way you can get around not doing it. So I think that works pretty well, because it gives you some tips as to how to set your chair up, screen height, all that sort of stuff, which is very easy to do training that way remotely. Other aspects of the question, I can't remember. Katie, you mentioned some other aspects.
Yeah, there were. So it was the continuation of the comment. I find matters that need alignment or workshops to resolve take much longer as people try to manage everything by bite-sized 1-hour Zoom calls rather than a face-to-face meeting.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair comment. I think the workshops side of it is much better face-to-face. Although there's a lot of good technology now that I was skeptical would work as effectively as it has. So there are some good technology tools now that can help you to run workshops. So we did a lessons learned workshop by remotely using a particular technology, and it worked surprisingly well. I was a skeptic, but it did work pretty well. We got some good outputs from it, but it's definitely not the preferred way of doing it. But it can be made to work. If you need to run a workshop, then it can be made to work. But I still think face-to-face is better, definitely.
Yeah,
I think, I mean, to make a comment, I think there's so many challenges around all of this, right? I mean, today we try to focus on the positive of that, but we can probably spend many more hours looking at all the challenges. So
Right.
Definitely
Challenges and opportunities, right? No, at the end of the day, I think on that point about how do we safeguard ourselves, I think it comes down to our own personal responsibility, because technology and videos and all of those are enablers that can help us. Eventually it is our own habits and all that that we have to take into account and say, well, what do I do every 15-20 minutes? Get up, walk around, stretch yourselves, look away from the screen, so that you get give your eyes a little bit of a break and so on. So I think it's not something that happens overnight, maybe gradually, just habit forming that, hey, every 15-20 minutes have an alarm that says, okay, time for me to shut down, go for a 5-minute break and then come back, recharge. I think technology and all that is great, but at the end of the day, it's really the ownership is with us.
Really, exactly. Staying true to yourself and to our needs, what we need, and to put ourselves on the first place. And I think quite many people have troubles with that still, without pandemic, with pandemic. So this was, really well put. So thank you. And we've got lovely comments to finish up on a lovely positive note. Thanks for the great discussion. I took a lot from today's session. Thank you so much for the session and the amazing discussion. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Quite many thank yous.
The final thought I would leave everybody is that, we were resilient as people. COVID just made us prove it. And so I think with that, good evening, good afternoon, and a good day to the rest of you.
Yeah, thank you again so much to our speakers, Darshan, Tom, and Walter. It was a pleasure. And we are finishing our first week of the PPM Summer Talk Conference. So I'll keep you spamming with all the upcoming events and topics, discussions, case studies. We've got 4 weeks coming up still, and I really look forward to seeing everyone online. So keep checking your emails. Please feel free to invite people to join our platform. And as I've mentioned, it's all for you. So hopefully, you can make the most of it. And I'll be more than happy to see you all next week, and hopefully in person one day too. So thank you again so much for everyone joining in to our wonderful Three Musketeers. It was a pleasure, and the session will be online, after I actually receive the recording. So I'll be posting it as soon as I can for others to be able to get a lot from this talk and discussion. So thank you again so much, and have a lovely, lovely rest of your day wherever you are in the world.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Wouter. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.